All right, this is class one. My name is Kenda Bell, and I am the head facilitator for nine superpowers powers at the Psalms Mystery School. And I'm doing a two-part class where I'm going to do some light decoding of They Cloned Tyrone. And I tagged it, They Cloned Tyrone, but are you a clone too? Because what I found was that the movie touched people in different ways. It was almost like people had their own ideologies and thoughts about it. But I also felt that people missed some key elements and the whole idea of cloning. And what does that really mean? Because, of course, there are people that feel as though there are actual biological clones. And I'm not going to debate you if you feel that way or not. But I think more telling than the idea of a physical clone are ways that we are intellectually cloned and socially cloned. Okay. So we're going to go over a little bit of that today in our first class. So, for those who do not know me, my name is Kenda Bell, and I am like I said earlier, the head facilitator for nine superpowers initiation, and that's why it says nine SBI. I'm also trained in feminine power, sun manifestation system. That's why I lead it. Bagua astrology, the three-way mirror, up level, up level communication, and as well as the SMART method. And I coined myself as the Bagua interpreter, meaning that I like to take the science that I have learned and I like to teach it through the more practical, everyday things like life, and especially television and films. And I know a lot of spiritual people are like, well, I don't watch a lot of television because I don't want that junk in my brain, or it's programmed. I don't want to be programmed. And I get that. But what I want you guys to also know is that oftentimes, even if someone is trying to, if you will, program you or do something to you, and we at the mystery school believe that we create everything, that there is no one identifiably doing anything to you. And I know that it's complex. I'm not gonna fight you on that. But as you grow and you learn a lot of these tools here, you will understand that a lot of the things that we experience come from our choices and the way that we interact with the world. And we have a lot of initiations. Nine superpowers takes you on a year journey where every 45 days you tackle what we call archetypes. And these are the energies, the personalities, if you will, that you see in the real world and in our own lives. And there are gateways that open up every 45 days that maximize these attributes that are already in you. And so what I like to do when I'm teaching is I like to take a television show, a film, or it's sometimes like a story and kind of teach a lesson about the archetypes, but as well as the hero's journey, because we're all on a hero's journey. Whether you feel like a hero or not, you are on your personal journey. And so They Cloned Tyrone was is probably my favorite movie of the year thus far. We still have a couple of months left, but they cloned Tyrone is so much more than social commentary on the melanated people. That is a very surface interpretation. And stick with me, roll with me, and I'm going to ask some questions as we go on, and I want your feedback. Okay. Now, these are two questions that I want you to contemplate. Now, for some of you guys that have not seen it, I hope that you do have the opportunity to see it, or at the very least, ponder these questions about another film or a television show that you may really like or that you follow. There are people like right now, I'm watching The Shy. The Shy is to me a really great show, and it also really helps you to see the archetypes that we teach here. Most of the time, I'm going to tell you that when you are watching an ensemble series or film, and I'm talking about like your big shows like Game of Thrones, that was one of my shows. Whenever you are watching the Marvel films, you are going to see the basic template of hero, goal, objective, journey, getting past obstacles, creating an energy or persona to get the job done. There's a plan, and they usually go to war or they soldier through. And then after they're done, they brag. They hey, we did that. And that's a part of your life too. That's your story that you go through. But a lot of us sometimes we get our hiccups along our path because we don't have certain tools to help us to stay aligned. So these two questions, the first one, what aspects resonated with you? What was it about They Cloned Tyrone or whatever other film or show that drew you in? Was there a character or a situation you strongly connected with? I can tell you, They Cloned Tyrone, it drew me in just by the title, the cast, and I identified with a lot of the characters, and I think that was the whole point of it. I think they did some clever things with making us get into the story, but also put ourselves in the story and to see ourselves as well. Okay. Another aspect that I want you to consider as we go on with this discussion is hidden patterns in your life. Can you identify any recurring patterns or habits that might be holding you back from your true potential? And again, that's the hero's journey for any story that you read, from Cinderella to Game of Thrones to The Shy to Power, Billions, um, any film. There's always a pattern that the character or the characters have to break. They have to create a new pattern, a new way of seeing and thinking about who they are. That's the same with us. And the movies and television shows show us these things. So keep those two questions in your back pocket. So let me hide this floater. So there were a lot of quotes in the movie. They use a lot of curse words. So if anyone that has sensitive ears, be forewarned, but it's really worth the journey. So Slick Charles, which is the pimp, Jamie Foxx says, ain't no easier mark than a sucker who sees exactly what he expects to see. Slick Charles. Now, ain't no mark easier than a sucker who sees exactly what he expects to see. Now, when we think about that, we almost like, oh, a sucker. They see exactly what he expects to see. It's giving the idea that a lot of times society will create a certain scenario, a certain situation that they want you to see. They want you to see despair. They want you to feel hopeless. They want you to feel less than or small, not as important. That's why they make people, quote unquote, stars. People that are stars, they're put up high so we can feel small. But in actuality, it is a cooperative effort because these quote unquote stars, meaning human beings, meaning actors and actresses, would not be stars unless we, the people, followed them, supported them. It's a cooperative effort. So, one of the things that we learned in nine superpowers is that there is no out there is no other. Everything is a cooperative handshake in terms of what you are creating, whether it's for your good or for your bad. Okay. Does anyone have, and you can come off of mute just because I like interactive. So when you see this quote, ain't no easier mark than a sucker who sees exactly what he expects to see. How does that resonate with you? Anyone can come off mute really quick. Anyone that's new,
Uh,
I will call you out.
I was, I'm still kind of thinking about it, but I feel like it's like you just you walk into a room and you make assumptions. Maybe you have stereotypes in your head. Maybe you have
Mm,
a routine in your head, like, oh, this is that and that is this and this person is this way and that person is that way. So you're not really observing what's going on around you. Like there might have been a whole change that happened that you didn't notice because you're not, really paying attention. You're just going by, what you assume is going
mm,
on in the room, but you didn't really look. Like you're not a very observative person. You didn't notice the picking pockets because
mm,
you just thought everybody's standing around like they always do. So it kind of gives me that feeling like a person who's not really observing what's going on. So they're
mm.
missing stuff. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Thank you. That's a good one. I appreciate that. And anyone that is new or old, a student, a current student, a past student, new, just joined the class, you're open to share. There is no wrong answer. We are
I want
all connected to source. Yes.
so this is Yolanda. So when I
Hi.
look, hi everyone. So I'm looking at the question or the statement, and then when it says, see exactly what we expect to see, I thought about the phrase, um, we use what you get, you usually get what you expect, right? And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
mm-mm. And I say mm-mm when it's the not so good things in my life that happen, right? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
mm-mm. But when I
Right.
write my vision board and I write my goals down, then I can say, oh yeah, 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 I do get, I usually get what I expect. But it was something else you had mentioned, something else you said. Oh, and when you said that we're all, what's the word you used? um this isn't the word, but like an agreement of what,
Mm-hmm.
it's another word that you use. So
I'm trying to
um
remember. I talk fast. So go.
I'm sure that I'll type it in if it comes to my mind, but I'm thinking like I'm not in agreement with negative stuff, or at least that's how I feel.
Right.
I want to believe that, I can believe the good stuff. I'm in agreement, but when the other stuff happened, I'm like, no, I didn't make no agreement for this to be in line or to create. Maybe use the word create or
Oh,
something.
yes, create. Yes,
Oh,
that's what I said.
yeah. So that's
So
where that's
yes.
challenging for me.
No, thank you. So I'm going to speak on that really quick, and then I'm going to keep going. But to now, when I first joined and I started studying these tools, and they said I create my life, I create everything, and we have 9 mantras that we work with, and 2 of them is no shame, no blame, which I mean some people kind of like the no shame part. That feels good to us, right? I have no shame. But when we talk about no blame, it's like, but
Mm-hmm.
somebody did something to me. And then we go into there, no victims, no villains. And it's like, what are you talking about? There's wars and rumors of wars, there's murderers, there's killers, there's all these different baneful people in the world. And of course, when we talk about it more so in a interpersonal way, I know that if I'm talking about I'm hungry, right? I'm hungry, I'm starving, but I don't have any money to go to buy me food. Am I really hungry, or am I just not wanting to cook food? I might have food in the house, but we always say I ain't got nothing to eat. And there's food in the house.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it's either we create the money to go out to eat the way that we want to, or we create the money or the resources to have the particular foods in our home, or we go and we cook something because just by default that is not true. We're
Mm-hmm.
expecting. So I know I kind of went a little far off, but that was what I meant. But we
Thank
can
you
get
for sharing
we
that. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, but we can get more into it. Okay. So one of the things I'm going to start off with doing first is breaking down the names. Okay. Now, one of the main things everyone was talking about was who was Tyrone? We kept waiting, like, where's Tyrone? Who is Tyrone? Where is he at? Why is it this guy's name is Fontaine? This guy's name is Charles. When is Tyrone coming? And I think that was very genius. Okay. And we're going to talk about that. So the name Tyrone, I did some research. The meaning is from the land of the yew tree, YEW. You guys can look it up. And a yew tree is described as a hardy tree that can survive in infertile land. Mm, Tyrone. So, and it also means Lord in no, in Gaelic. So we're already hearing and seeing the language of this name. They clone Tyrone. They clone this strong tree that can survive in an infertile land. So that's the message that Tyrone can be anyone. They clone Tyrone. We find out who Tyrone is, and I'm trying not to ruin it for anyone that hasn't seen it, but you find out who Tyrone is, and the idea is anyone can be Tyrone. Everyone is Tyrone, right? The actual character's name that was portrayed by John Boyega is named Fontaine. Now, Fontaine comes from the word fountain, an ornamental feature in a pool that consists of a jet of water that is forced up into the air by a pump. So when we think like fontaine, a fountain, what does that mean? That means that again, if you watch the movie, you'll see where this place where they live, the Glen, was a planned or created space, a social experiment, a way to quote unquote keep the status quo. And when we look up the name Glen in Native American cultures, it in some tribes, it means valley or a narrow gorge, while in others, it is associated with the concept of wisdom or knowledge. So, what is that saying when we pull all of these together? What it's saying is that these characters were in a valley or a narrow gorge, and a valley is usually um a low place, a low place. So these people were put in this low place, in a narrow place, in a confined place that could actually be associated with the concept of wisdom and knowledge. But of course, when you look around the Glen, it looks like um your average quote unquote hood, your your places that are not populated with the best people or the best things. These people were living in poverty. It was a very dark. If you watch the film, the images, the landscape is very dark. It's there. They are in a valley, but there's the wisdom and knowledge in that valley. And when we look at the main character, Fontaine, and there's a scene where um, Fontaine and the other characters, which is Yo-Yo and Slick Charles, all are in this convergent with um, the man, if you will. I'm using this in quotations with the man, where he tells them, well, we created all of this, for this purpose. And that Fontaine and Slick Charles are expensive prototypes or clones. And it lets you know that Fontaine was being forced, his emotions, what he was feeling, what he was dealing with, were being forced up and pushed out by this quote unquote system. And again, we can say no blame, no shame, no victims, no villains with this. I create my life. But how do you know that if you're seeing the same cycle over and over again? You know, our two other principal characters, Yo-Yo. That name, believe it or not, has a meaning which means friendly, moving back and forth. So Yo-Yo, the feminine energy, the feminine counterpart of this, was very animated, had a lot of energy, and she was moving back and forth. She helped them. Did she get mad? She go back and forth, and that is somewhat of the energy that males and females deal with relating, just in general with the women. We're hot, we're cold, and we're going to get into what she does in a minute. And she has on very um auspicious colors. Everyone does, and we're going to talk about that too. Then we go to Charles, known as Slick Charles. Slick Charles is a pimp, and his name Charles means free man. And again, the irony is that all these people are in this town called the Glen, which is a valley place, which is a narrow forge that they don't even know about, for real, for real. And how many of us are living out or practicing patterns or caricatures that we don't even really understand or know, because we have been socially cloned to get up, brush our teeth, take a shower, hopefully, go to work, come home, rinse, and repeat. We're all in this pattern that has been created by society, has been created by our family, our social settings, and of course ourselves, because again, we create our lives. So again, we're coming back to these questions. What aspects resonated with you? And what are some hidden patterns in your life? Because these people they had a lot of patterns. So we're going to dig into this. So any questions or comments before I go any further? I just wanted to give a simple layout of their names. Any questions or comments before I go any further?
When you say patterns, do you think or could we consider it as like unconsciousness?
Yes, that can be because oftentimes everything they become habits. Like,
Mhm. Okay.
for instance, and thank you for that question. A lot of times as we watch this movie, especially when we looked at the main character Fontaine, he had a set ritual where he would get up. He was a drug dealer and he had the same system, the same thing. He saw the same people, the same thing. He just rinse and repeat of this dismal existence. The only two things where you see him changing is when he quote unquote has a dream. And when we go into the dream state, we watch Fontaine have this really horrible existence of he gets up, he sells drugs, he does try to help out this little boy called Junebug, which we later find out it represents a little brother that he had. If you notice, he has on green. He wears a lot of green. Green in our system is associated with arch, the archetype of the lover. But he wasn't really being too much of a lover. But what I will say is the green also deals with the heart chakra. Even though he had a very hard exterior, he had a heart. He was in a lot of pain because, as we saw throughout the movie, once he was able to observe himself in a in a mess, in a quote unquote his body, once we're able to start becoming an observer of our lives, that's when we begin to see the patterns. And once he was able to see himself and witness himself laid out with bullet holes, like, what the heck is going on? What is this? Of course, that is a dramatic image. But in terms of our everyday life, do we ever sit back and observe ourselves and look at the wounds and the battle scars and say, something's got I'm not dead. I didn't die from that. I'm still here. So wh- how is this possible? And more importantly, how can I change this? Do I want to go back the same way? Because I'm seeing myself in a different way. And because Fontaine was able to see himself outside of himself, this quote unquote clone, an aspect of who he was, is shocking. And so I want you to think about it. Are there certain things that have happened to you that would have killed you? And have you been able to really look at yourself, observe, and be, wow, I survived that. And maybe I need to change my patterns. I need to set up certain goals, certain aspirations to shift the way that I'm operating in my life. When we look at this, is to me the Holy Trinity. In the traditional church, there is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. In this one, I see Father, Son, and the Mother, the feminine aspect. The Holy Spirit to me is representative of the Holy Spirit because the Holy Spirit does what? It moves. She's called Yoyo. She goes back and forth. She moves. Her character was very pivotal, pivotal to getting the masculine to move. Her energy, archetype, and colors kind of align with our our lover archetype and our negotiator archetype. And for those of you that don't understand that language, don't worry about it. I'll give you a brief understanding of that. In the Bagua, there are four principal partnerings or paradigm choices. Now, that is often taught when we deal with dating and relationship. It's very valid. And I use that system to help couples to figure out where they land and how to boost certain aspects. But in this case, what I like to teach in nine superpowers, and one of the things that we're going to be really doing in this coming year is integrating these pairings of like when you activate an aspect of you during the quote unquote the feminine aspects of our season, how are you going to marry that to the masculine? Because she's able to move, she got them going, she got them to take it seriously, but she was considered a hoe. How many of us are geniuses, brilliant, powerful, can shift things and make things happen? But because of the way that we feel that the world has categorized us, observed us, that we're still having to function in a way that is not authentic. But Yo-Yo, the feminine character, definitely was able to move the men because once they caught Yo-Yo, the game was over. And again, even if you haven't seen it, I can tell you about it, but you're still going to have to see it. I can tell you about the movie, but you're going to have to experience it, right? When we look at Slick Charles, Jamie Foxx character, and of course, Jamie Foxx, I thought it was very interesting and funny that the movie when the movie came out, Jamie Foxx reappeared. And we know that he had had some challenges with his health. Some people were saying that it was not him, that he was a clone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I find it very funny. But when we look at him, he is carrying the energy of the negotiator. And in our Bagua, he would synchronize with like a pimp or someone that, for lack of a better word, is able to get the lady. He has a good mouthpiece. He's very slick with his words. He's able to pull in the feminine to help him to get more money. The feminine energy aligns with that energy so that she can continue to create money. And you see those two together. Now, he is wearing purple, which in our system is assigned to the soldier. But for this conversation, I want us to really look at the purple is really almost an eggplant. It's almost like a mixing of blood, the root chakra, and the crown. Because in actuality, he was often speaking truths through riddles. And again, I really want to break down the science, but I don't have enough time. And there's so much in this. But what I want you to understand is that number one, once Fontaine was able to see himself outside of himself on that table, it was when things began to change. He began to look at himself, look at his life, and decide that certain things are not right. There was another scene where he they went through three different places to figure out what happened to him. One was a trap house, self-explanatory, a trap house. But we know that a trap house is code word for a house that houses and preps drugs. Trap house, self-explanatory. The next place that he went to was a restaurant, a chicken place. And we all remember when we had the Popeye chicken, everybody was going crazy. Chicken people was fighting, cutting each other off in the drive-through over this chicken. And people were saying, did they put something in chicken? What's going on? Again, we can say that the government is putting stuff in the drugs, people are putting something in the chicken. Or can we say that these are two different gateways for us to get programmed? And when I say program, that's not to say that restaurants or the church, which was the third avenue that they were able to quote unquote clone people were, again, the trap house, i.e., drugs. Number two, the fried chicken, the damn good chicken. I think it was called damn good chicken. And the third place was the church. And when we look at the Glen is a example of the hood. But these are different things that all people are put in a certain space, given a certain program, and then they act it out. The only time that change happens is when the pattern is broke. The pattern usually comes with tragedy, but it also comes with observation of self beyond the tragedy. Because, of course, we can talk about the African American community. We've had tragedy after tragedy, and we see strides that are being made, but it's really about the individual. Once each of us begin to start seeing our patterns and breaking them, that's when the community and then the town, the state, the world can begin to transform. It usually takes one person and a cause, right? Now, Yo-Yo, what I found interesting, and again, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to give me some feedback with the film if you've seen it, is that the government person said that Yo-Yo, they did not clone her. She wasn't valuable, that the two men were valuable and she was not. And of course, in society, we are often led to think that the feminine is not valuable, the feminine is not effective, the feminine is not that important as the masculine, which again, we know that is not true because we need masculine and feminine to procreate. We need masculine and feminine in whatever body that is in, meaning that as we start moving into the area of non-binary or well, not non-binary, but transgender and and the other communities, it's not so much about the physical body as it is the energetic of masculine and feminine, i.e., internal and external. And these are the things that we learn and express through nine superpowers. We go through the feminine phases, which are very internal work. This is where we start dealing with the internal, the way that we think, the way that we feel, how we comprehend the world around us internally. We look at our patterns. We learn how to seek our higher self because it was not until, and I'm going to come back to what I'm saying, when when Fontaine was able to see himself on the table when they were confronted and they knew that it was a conspiracy. They knew Nixon, I believe the character was that represented the government, told them exactly what was doing, how he was controlling them. He gave them trigger words. We have trigger words, black on black crime. That's just one. What is your trigger word to make you feel helpless? Write that down. If you have a piece of paper, and I should have told you guys to bring paper, but they showed us that there are certain images, there are certain words that are used to trigger us. We see it in television and film. I mean, not television and films, but we do see it in television and films. But we see that very obviously in the news. They use certain words to trigger a certain feeling or certain thought, and we respond to them. All three of these characters ended up feeling helpless, except for Yo-Yo. Fontaine decided to go back to his life. He ain't going to do nothing. He's like, whatever, it is what it is. So again, we go back to the quote. He expected to be, it's all, I can't do this anyway. And he gave up. But it wasn't until he realized that his mother wasn't there. He still knew that he was on some weird trip. This was not his life. He was living it and going about his day to day. But once he came to an understanding that what he was doing was not truly normal and it was orchestrated, he tried to push it aside, and then he went to talk to his mother. And I want someone to come off. I want to ask you guys, for anyone that has seen They Clone Tyrone, and I want to thank everyone that has joined us. Um, Anyone that saw the movie, how did you feel when Fontaine busted the door down to his mother's room? How did you interpret that? And then I'm going to give you my point of view. Anyone that I have that hasn't spoken yet, I'd love to hear from you. Sekhmet, how about you? Can you speak? Have
Um,
you?
Hi.
Hi.
Um, yeah, I did see the movie. I thought it was very interesting. On that point, I so it was to me. It looks like a setup with the equipment being
Mm-hmm.
there,
Mm-hmm.
and th- because definitely it gave me like. Mm, I don't know, police vibe or something with the recordings being set up in there like
Mm-hmm.
that. So definitely in the middle of uh, something that was arranged
Mm-hmm.
in a
Okay.
program definitely that was set up for him to be in, and it was about him recognizing it. But by the equipment though was definitely seemed very planted because how could the equipment get there?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yes.
yeah, I don't think I have any more. The whole thing was very intriguing, but yeah,
Okay.
that's the only input I can put on it.
No problem. Thank you. So yes,
Thank you.
I appreciate you for sharing. So yes, definitely. But I want us to go beyond, like I said, no blame, no shame, no victims, no villains. And I know you're like, whatever, but just hear me out. The bottom line was that, to me, what it symbolized is the barrier in between parents and children when they're put in a situation. And what we understand based on the story was that Fontaine's brother was killed and the mother was in her room. And if you notice, the sayings changed. At When he first came home, she said that she went to a fish fry or something with the church. And then once he saw himself, he became his own observer. Whenever she spoke to him, she said that she was tired and she was watching her stories. So the it was not until he finally decided to take action was when he broke the door down. And that's when we have that emotional wall. A lot of us, we know that something's not right. He cleared. He he bust down an obstacle because he wanted to connect with his mother. He wanted to connect to his purpose, his reason. He wanted to connect to something that felt real, and she wasn't real. And again, we can look at it on a very trippy, the government conspiracy, or we can look at the idea of mothers that are emotionally unavailable to their children, whether adults or young, due to trauma. Sherelle, come on.
So That's what I was going to say, like a false sense of support when you are living in this cyclic environment and day in, day out, this is my routine to be in whatever way. It can feel like there's a false sense of support from those around us. And oftentimes, when people are living from a traumatic place, um, you are stuck in that victimhood.
Mm,
Well, you ain't called me, so that's why I ain't show up at your party. Or, just simple things like that. You
mhm,
get into that negative space because ain't nobody got my back. I'm out here alone, I'm on this journey
mm,
alone. So
mm.
as you were speaking, that's what came up for me. But this is wonderful, Kenda. Thank you.
Awesome. That is good. Um, Naomi, I see you raise your hand.
Yeah, because you talking about that part took me back to the question that I answered earlier, the quote that you said, where they were saying if you don't see because you are only seeing what you expect.
Mm-hmm.
And that made me think about that. He didn't see what was going on with his life because every time he went to his mother's door, like he had his routine, he expects her to just say something and he just walks away. So
Mm-hmm.
he didn't know what was going on. That's part of the reason he didn't know what was going on, because he was so used to that. He got into that routine. And, we miss a lot of stuff because we just go along with whatever routine. But that emotional outburst that he had was what caused him to break out of that routine and, bust open the door and finally see your mother was never really there. And, we don't know what happened to the mother really, but, the whole thing was a fake house and all of that. The whole thing was a setup. So, and that made me also think about the feminine,
Mm-hmm.
emotional, outbursts. People always say, oh, you're being emotional, you're acting like a woman, and it's kind of like a put down. But that's
Mm-hmm.
really, like, I've learned to embrace my, emotional side a lot more, because it's kind of like a guidance for you. Like it will, if we really release your emotions and then dig into what made you have that outburst, you'll see things about yourself, your life, your relationships that are going on that you've been
Mm-hmm.
trying to suppress and stick to the routine and don't say anything. But when something really bothers you and you have this outburst, then that's where you make it known that I got a problem with this. So he had to make it known that, I need to talk to you. I need to see you. And he finally made that outburst, and um, he found something major out that was going on. So that was like a little hype up moment when I tied
Yeah.
those two things together about the movie. So that was cool.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And again, he was on a hero's journey. So I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
break it down for you. So just say you are Fontaine, right? You're Fontaine, even though you're not Fontaine, but you are Fontaine, i.e., Tyrone. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
before I go any further, was there anyone else that wanted to share their thoughts on that scene with the mother before I go on? Because I think that's very i- important, because it shows that the masculine and the feminine, um, when we confront our fears, because I believe that in the back of his mind, he knew his mother, she wasn't right, but he was afraid to confront that. So he
Mm-hmm.
let that door stay. So what we talk about in nine superpowers is that we get to a stage which is called the clearing phase, where we have to really look at some stuff that is uncomfortable and we have to bust the door down or clear a path to greater understanding of self. And the idea that the mother is not there is very symbolic in terms of the world in general, not just African Americans, but people in general, the mother energy. the feminine is closed off and distant, is going through the motions, if you will, and the idea of the story, the purpose, the meaning, because when we go through our gateways, we get to the devotee phase, which synchronizes with the mother. And so his purpose, his story, his narrative, everything that he knew or he thought that he knew, he felt it was a lie. He knew it was a lie, but when the mother was no longer there, it was like it was no going back. It's no going back. Sekmek, I saw you come off. Did you want to share something real quick?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I don't know, but at some point, I mean, I'm glad that you're doing this seminar because I kind of did one similar with the team that I coach as well. But
Okay.
I wanted to know or ask you at some point, do you all being spiritual people, um, spiritual persons in life, do you actually believe? I mean, I know for a fact that cloning do exist, but do you think like cloning celebrities like Little Kim and all these different people that look so different exist? Really, that's really pretty much what I.
Ah, you put me on the spot. So, um, I honestly, with the things that I've seen over the past few years, anything is possible. I don't say no or never or that's crazy anymore. I didn't think that the government would actually honor and say that there are aliens. Um, I never thought I would see a day when I had to have a mask on my face to go inside a store. So, hey, you know what I mean? I mean, I believe is more cloning in terms of your mind and your mentality. Personally,
Mhm.
I think that cloning is really a generational thing through the three channels that the film showed: drugs, the trap house, which is a trap, the trap house, drugs, and that could be your any drug that you use too much of. It could be actual the hard stuff, it could be weed, it could be sex, it could be food, whatever that thing is to help you to escape. If you abuse it, if it becomes tainted, it can lead you down a certain road. Um,
Well,
the
yes,
church,
I'm sorry.
yeah, just a second. You know, the church, same difference. Again, the cloning can be a multitude of things. I hope that answered you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the cloning. Like I said, I do know that there's cloning through, they clone food, you know,
Hmm.
um, it's so many things that are being cloned. And I think it's something in our gut as well that tell us something is kind of deep about this movie. And that besides the points that they were
Hmm.
making, but also, you know, what would we do? What could we do? Talking about decloning, I was just talking to a friend about how the USDA, still part of government funding though.
Hmm.
I had a
Okay.
couple of friends that lived in rural areas in North Carolina, and I'm saying, it's a lot of funding to start farming out
Hmm.
there. I mean, they just giving the money away. And
Mm.
mostly rich people are just grabbing it. You're in the rural areas, they're out there. I'm like, why won't you go get it? I was like, you can start farming. They want people to grow food
Yeah.
again. But the
Yeah.
decloning part, we in this city life, and it's hard to return back to you know
Hmm.
um the other way around. It was easy to
Yeah.
get us out the country, but to get
Uh,
the city back into the country is a whole different story. But I think that's part of decloning too. Do we want to be in charge of our food supply, or are we cloned enough to just keep on going with the flow? And I think that's just where we at, but we
mhm.
all come to this earth hell to do something, to bring some kind of change. But that's
Yes.
just my
Thank.
2 cents.
Thank you. No problem. No problem. No problem. Thank you. But yeah, so that whole thing about the cloning thing, again, I believe that it is multi-layered thing. So when we look at Yo-Yo, again, her journey, when we watch The movie, she was a whole person with gold. And another thing, let me go back. The movie, I think it was very genius to confuse you to try to figure out what era this movie it was happening in. It was very genius because it's showing you it's not just one time or one era. They had them wearing, it felt like they were in the 70s, but then you saw these Martin Clarks. And then you see Fontaine driving an old car, but he's listening to I'll Be Sure. And I think that they didn't want you to get caught up in thinking about, oh, see, they did that back then. They did that then. They these things have always been occurring. The big they had quote unquote always been doing things. But it was not until the woman, the essence, the Holy Spirit was taken away and held hostage that the men, the soldiers, the leaders came together to get her free. And that's about you. What are you going to be willing to take action for? Fontaine's hero journey led him to confront his worst fear was that not so much that his mother emotionally she was gone, but that she literally was no longer there. And once he did that, he went into action and they went and saved her. But before they did that, they realized that there were clones of so many people. We went through the place and they saw clones. Slick Charles had great lines in the movie. And one of the things that I like about Slick Charles' character, Jamie Foxx's character, was that he was very matter of fact about things, but he was very truthful. He was very wise. And when it came time, he got into leadership. And when we saw all of those people, they did what? They got a plan, they executed it, and they traveled. And then we finally found out in the end who Tyrone is. And it's just some guy living in LA that's just watching television. And he's like, wait a minute. And his friends say, hey, is that you? That guy look like you on TV, Tyrone. And it's a symbolism that is not just Tyrone, it's all of us. We are Tyrone in our own Glen. Okay. So we're right at the 9:09 hour on my time. Is there anyone who wants to give me some feedback or comment before we close out this class? Because we got class 2 tomorrow. Nobody has anything to share? Come on now.
Oh, I did want to say I thought that Yo-Yo was more of a visionary in some scenes. She could because she
Yes,
had a lot of ideas, and when we first got introduced to her, she was saying all her ideas that she had
that's
because she was
true.
gonna leave Cohen, and she was telling Tyrell she's gonna go do blockchain and all of that. So I thought of her a lot as a visionary kind of androgynous character because she was bossing the guys around a lot, and she was coming up with a lot of the ideas to me.
That is a good point because they did place her in the lover, i.e. the whole archetype.
Right.
And I thought it was very genius that they gave the three stereotypical images of the quote unquote Glen or the hood or the low place or the valley of the whole a drug dealer and a
Mm-hmm.
pimp. And they
Yeah.
transformed their community by waking up and realizing that, okay, so are we going to either deal with this and just die and just get recloned for someone else's pleasure, or are we going to take action and expose these things? And of course, a lot of us are probably saying, well, that's a movie, that's a lot of work. I'm not ready to start no type of revolution. Well, they're starting a revolution in Africa right now. If you're watching the regular news, you're missing out on revolution. if you're not seeing men and women of all ages and races rising up and saying no more, like they're breaking their patterns, you're seeing patterns being broken because people are ready to get on their hero's journey. They have decided to observe and really look at, oh my God, is this what's really going on with me? Is this how am I laid out like this? So this is not my life. When we look at what's happening in Niger, this is a very radical move. And a lot of people joke about TikTok, but I get a lot of my international news from TikTok. It's not just dancing, it's not just people doing goofy stuff, that's there. But there are people that actually live in these countries that are broadcasting and showing you exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
And once you start to realize that you, by you shifting your hero story, that you can create change. And that's what we do in nine superpowers. And and I want to thank everyone for coming. Um, if you're interested in learning more about, I didn't put my email in here. So we are gearing up for the new year. And we're doing a lot of changes. And my current students, I will be letting you know exactly what those are. But the only real thing for certain that I want you to know is that you are your own hero. You are your own savior. Now, you can create community to help you to get to your goal, to get to the end, but you are the orchestrator. You are your own architect of your life. Once you realize that something is not right, that's when you know. And then it begins the process of being brave enough to start shifting your patterns of what you do. One of the things that I forgot to mention was that when Fontaine used to go, he would always go to the liquor store and he would buy a scratch off. And the homeless man would always say, "You ain't gonna win." The old man would always have these these words of wisdom, and he just represented to me the peacekeeper, the person that knows what's going on. And you may think they're crazy, but he understands and he knows. And what I found interesting was how many of us buy lottery tickets. I do. I bought lottery tickets. I'm like, oh, if I could just hit the Powerball, oh my God, what? Oh, my life would be changed. So there's a part of you that knows that there's work that needs to be done. There's a part of you that realizes that there is something, there's a possibility for you out there, but you're not willing really to invest more than $2 or $5. But it's not even about the money, it's about the energy. About the energy. So, any last comments or
Yes, quickly.
questions?
Yes,
Yes.
quickly. This is segment. Yes. I just wanted to add to it. I've been on the research for over 10 years about gene editing. Gene editing is very much real. Out of 21, 22 genes, we have that could be altered. But gene editing really, they already have these laws put in place since 2016. And it's out of
Mm-hmm.
all the gene editing clinics. And gene editing simply mean that you can edit your sex or you can edit your personality. And it's real. You can
No, I
edit.
don't listen, I don't doubt that it's real, but you are more realer. You are more powerful than any type of program or gene, DNA
Yes.
shifter. And
Mhm.
that's what we're talking about. Yes, there are some people that are set here, that are sent here, set here to quote unquote do whatever. But the movie is showing you no matter what they, the infamous they, have set up for you, you are the orchestrator and the architect of your life. At any given moment, you can pick up your arms and shift that. So people like you that have this knowledge, you might be someone that would join our program, and I would coach you and have you to create some goals that edify your skill set and where you want to go. Because if this is something that you are passionate about, I can tell I can just hearing from you that you're about the conscious path, living healthy, and creating a better world for you and your loved ones, and that's fine. So what we're going to do is like, what are your goals? Why is this so important to you? What is your higher self telling you? Not what the world is telling you, not what your fears are whispering, but what is the God self telling you about this thing that means so much to you? And how can we create that into something wonderful? Oh, you have a okay, you have the movie on standby. I'm sorry, I saw the comment. Yes. So so that's what I'm telling you. I understand what you're saying. I still get into that. Well, they gonna do, but what you gonna do? All right. So I appreciate everyone for joining me tonight. I hope you guys come back tomorrow because there's a part two, and Kenya K. Stevens, co-founder of the Mystery Schools, will be joining us tomorrow, and we're going to go over some ways that you can start decoding, decloning. Well, yeah, decoding and decloning yourself starting in
Thank
45 days. Did everyone love my class? I
I
don't hear
did.
I
nothing.
did. I did. Thank you so much for having this. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, y'all make sure you come back tomorrow because there's even more. Okay. I mean, I just scratched the surface because it's late.
I loved it. Sorry I
Thank
was late.
you. No
Awesome.
problem. And I will send the replay. I'm gonna get it together and hopefully we'll have it in the members library, but I may send it via email. Okay. And tell everybody and make sure you join me next year because we be doing this stuff all year long. Next year, we're going to be doing films. We're going to be talking about there's a new film that's coming out called The Book of Clarence. Have y'all heard about that?
Yes, I just saw that trailer yesterday.
So, The Wheel of Time is starting this Friday. That's a whole journey. The Shy is on. For people that may not like the fantasy movies, The Shy is really a great way to look at how the archetypes that we learn about every phase operate in everyday life. So I appreciate you guys for joining me. I have a passion for television and movies and teaching it on the 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 metaphysical level. And yes, it is a blue moon. What did I say? Yes, it's a blue moon. So this was my way of having a ritual to break your mind out of those old ways of thinking. So this is the type of things that we do. So we can do our rituals and we can meditate, we can eat our certain foods, take our baths and our showers, but the main ritual is the constant rewiring and reprogramming of your mind. Period, period, on period, on period, on period, on period, on period. All right, I'm gone for real. Have a great evening. No, you need to join. Yes, please contact me. Let me put my email in here one more time. If you want to know any more about the program or what we are doing at Psalms, um, email me or you can DM me. My name is Kenda Bell on all social medias. Um, Mike Bullock, oh, you came late. Let me send this out to everyone in the group. So if anyone has any questions about what I talked about, the program, or anything else, you can email me at that email or you can DM me. I am Kenda Bell on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. All right. Thank you and have a great night.
Good night.
Good
Thanks, Kim.
night. Welcome.
Good night.
Good night.